The bank has long been vilified by some for prioritising economic growth above all else. Are we about to see real reforms at the World Bank, or is it steady as she goes?
We're going through a tremendous change process. Now, one of the things that's important to note is that the bank has changed a lot over the last 20, 25 years. You know, Larry, the very first time I ever visited Washington after I graduated from college was to participate in a demonstration called 50 Years is Enough. I was part of the group that was calling for the closing of the World Bank back in those days, and this was just before Jim Wolfensohn became president, because we thought just this. We thought that the bank's focus was only on growth, that it wasn't on services, on building human capital. I have to tell you, the bank has changed tremendously in that time, and I've not seen very many institutions that have changed so much. You know, 10, 15 years ago, we weren't on the leading edge of battling climate change. We weren't on the leading edge of advocating for gender equality, but we are now, and will continue to be. So the change has happened, and on the one hand, we know that economic growth is critical. You cannot lift people out of poverty without economic growth. You cannot have jobs without economic growth, and 90% of the jobs are created in the private sector in developing countries. That's what our report showed. So you have to have growth, but there are deep values now based on evidence that the bank believes in strongly. Gender equality, tackling climate change, the inclusion of young people, growth that is clean and sustainable. These are things that are based on evidence that we can now promote with our member countries.
Okay. What's the World Bank going to do about rising inequality? Because some of the growth that we've seen has been associated with rising inequalities.
Yeah. Well, some of the programs that we have been promoting most aggressively all throughout the world, one of them is the conditional cash transfer program. I was just in Brazil and visited the country that really started the conditional cash transfer programs. And these are brilliant programs that give cash directly to the poorest, but condition it on things like keeping kids in school, making sure that kids get vaccinations and are well fed, and also even on public health education for the mothers. These programs have been extremely effective and especially effective at reducing inequalities. So the bank has supported these kinds of programs in many, many places in the world, and we continue to make the case. If you want to grow in the future, you've got to invest in human capital, and the conditional cash transfer programs are some of the best ways of doing it.
Okay. How is the rise of China and other large developing countries changing the way the World Bank works, and is the prospect of a BRIC bank a threat?
Well, we welcome the talk and the notion of a BRICS bank. I visited all the BRICS countries, and in every single one of them, there are just enormous infrastructure needs. For example, the last country I visited was India. They have a $1 trillion infrastructure deficit over the next 5 years. So with a BRICS bank, with all the work that we're doing in helping to build infrastructure, there's going to be plenty of work for every bank to do. Yeah. But I think the most exciting thing for me in my visits with all the BRICS countries is that each one of them had very specific requests to increase engagement with the World Bank. In China, it's urbanization. In India, it's health, education, and infrastructure. In Brazil, it's public-private partnerships around many different issues, including transportation. In South Africa, it was more generally, the South Africans asked us to help in improving their ability to deliver services to their populations across many sectors, and also how to improve their business climate. So in Russia, we're working on many different issues with them. Some of them focused on health and education, others focused on business. They have a goal in Russia to move up the rankings of our doing business ranking very, very quickly. So every country thinks that we're relevant, asked us to do more, but the needs are so great that a BRICS bank would be welcome.
Finally, what would you like to see in a post-2015 development agenda?
Well, I think that we've been clear about the need for a focus on poverty. We think that the notion of ending poverty is an important one, and I think there's general agreement. I think we have to tackle issues around climate change, but we have to find ways of setting targets that will actually change people's behavior. I think there are unfinished agendas. I think especially in women's and children's health, there's still a lot more to do. We're committed to engaging. I think the most important thing, though, is that we have to recognize that the MDGs were really helpful. They helped us focus. They helped us have clear targets. If we set goals that are just vague and feel-good goals, it's not going to help us to achieve what we want to achieve. So tackle the most important issues, but make sure that there are measurable outcomes so that it pressures us to actually achieve results on the ground.